Andrew. Thank you very much, Dr. Sri, Anwar Ibrahim, all the distinguished speakers, Melissa from ASLI, most importantly, the audience who are here today. Really glad that you gave me this opportunity to update my presentation on a topic that's very close to the heart of MITI, the ministry that I represent, as well as all those people who are interested in how digitization can make a very big impact, especially in the manufacturing and the related sectors. I know that many of the speakers later will talk about their own specific industries, which I think I can complement by talking more in terms of how the fourth industrial revolution from a digitization perspective has influenced and will continue to influence different sectors of the economy, including and especially the manufacturing sector. I know time is short. I have a lot of slides here. I won't go through all of them, but the reason why I have more slides here is so that for those of you who want to refer to the many examples that that are in these slides, it can be a very good reference point for you later. But for the purposes of this particular presentation, I will just highlight the ones that I think are more important to this particular audience. So, you know, like all good presentations, hopefully, we would have an overview of the different areas I'm going to go through very quickly. I'm going to start with talking about digitization in the third industrial revolution. I think for the young people in this room, you may not have lived through that. For the ones who are a bit older like myself, you know, you would have been able to see that and then compare digitization in the third industrial revolution with what is happening in the fourth industrial revolution to show some comparing and contrasting. And then also to give you examples of digitization under industrial revolution, the fourth industrial revolution. Then we move on to a very important part, which is businesses who are already involved, like what Dr. Sri Anwar said just now, the initiatives that are ongoing in terms of digitization, and then emerging opportunities. That's very important for the entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs. And then the last part, the most important part for entrepreneurs, which is the funding aspects. And I'll talk about how I think different models of funding have evolved from just giving grants to a much more sophisticated environment for funding different digital initiatives. The first one, digitization in the third industrial revolution. I thought that this, one of my interns got this very nice GIF to show you what digitization in the third industrial revolution was. You can see a slightly older laptop in the middle, and what it's showing is that all the stuff that's on that table basically was put on the computer. And for those of you who lived through the 1990s and then also the 2000s, you would have been able to see everything go through the internet, right? So basically that was the third industrial revolution, going through automation, going through disrupting the value chain through putting everything on the internet. How about the fourth industrial revolution? Okay, I'll give you some examples. You know how Encarta made the original Encyclopedia Britannica obsolete, and then later on Wikipedia made Encarta obsolete. So this is one example of how disruption happened in the third industrial revolution. We can talk about classified ads. Chun Wai is here, is from the Star, or formerly from the Star. You know, you can talk about how, for example, in the 80s and 90s, classified ads were very important revenue generator for many newspapers. But then later, we can see how this was taken online, in terms of job searches, for example, as well as listing of different products such as cars. What is different about the third industrial revolution and the fourth industrial revolution? I think this is where I really want to spend a bit more time on. The fourth industrial revolution, I think I just want to compare. The third industrial revolution was about automation. The fourth industrial revolution is about how different machines, different Internet of Things devices are talking to one another, and we can access the data, access the information in ways that are very, very different from what happened during the third industrial revolution. And that's where things like smart factories, big data analytics, Internet of Things comes into play. We know of the different components of the fourth industrial revolution. I think some of these would be familiar to many of you: big data analytics, systems integration, autonomous robots. All this can be found online in the Industry Forward program that was launched by the Prime Minister last October in MITI, and this is one of the flagship programs that MITI is embarking on in 2019. But I think what is important about these different areas is how they work together in different ways to give us new business opportunities, right? And this is where I think the biggest difference lies, which is how the network effects of IR 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution comes in terms of hooking up different devices. And this is where I think the young people, really help me prepare for this presentation. I think, how many of you here have heard of Xiaomi or Mi? I think many people here would have heard of Xiaomi in the context of smartphones, correct? But I was told that Xiaomi actually sells things like cameras. They sell things, like fridges, like different, washing machines even. And the interesting thing about all these devices is that they can talk to one another, and they can collect data through IoT devices which are connected to the internet. And Xiaomi now has 151 million IoT devices connected on the internet. And I heard that they've also launched their flagship store here in the Klang Valley in Berjaya Times Square, if I'm not mistaken. So this is one very good physical manifestation of the fourth industrial revolution. Okay, this is another example, of how different combinations of IR4 now work in ways which perhaps we're not so familiar with. Internet of Things combining with big data analytics to come up with better models of working. And I wanted to show this because this is an important way in which the younger generation is now working. So WeWork is actually a co-working space. But the different thing about this particular co-working space concept, which has just launched in Klang Valley in KL, is that they use big data analytics to measure the effectiveness as well as productivity of the workers depending on the configurations in the working space. So one example is that if you put a worker closer to the boss in the co-working space, you find that the productivity increases, right? So this is one good example of how these things can be optimized. Of course, you don't want the bosses to be hovering over your shoulder all the time. So a good balance has to be made. And this is how I think more big data analytics combining with collecting of information through IoT can be a very, very good way of optimizing processes. Just now at iLabs, I think one of the technologies introduced just now was how you want to capture different crowds which are walking and working in places like shopping malls, for example. And this is an example of how this can be optimized in a commercial setting. Okay, examples of digitization under IR 4.4. I'm not going to go through all of this, but some of the more interesting examples. Supermarkets like Amazon are already using recognition, facial recognition, as well as product recognition, together with online payments, as well as sensors, so that you can just go and pick out stuff from a supermarket after you scan in your code, and then you can walk out without, you have to pay, but without having to go through the cashier. This is something that's already kicked off, not just in places like the US, but also in many Chinese cities as well. Computer vision and IoT combining to make recycling and sorting easier, so that whenever you put a product, something that you want to recycle into the bin, they can actually tag it to your own QR code, for example, and make recycling payments to your particular account. Whereas before, you could just deposit recycling stuff without getting anything in return, or maybe get a token. Now you can get digital tokens. Right? Virtual reality is changing the way the way cars are designed from an augmented reality standpoint, whereby you can drive using augmented reality, like what Dr. Sri Anna went through just now. But from a design perspective, this is really important because you can simulate conditions whereby you have accidents, for example, and you can collect data from those situations, and you can save money in terms of not having to crash physical cars into obstacles and whatnot, right? So these are some examples. Business leveraging on digitization. I think this is where things become a little bit more interesting. When I started surfing the internet way back in the 1990s, Amazon was just selling books. I think some of us are still old enough to remember those days. But now Amazon not just sells different things, but they're also moving into warehouse management. They have moved into warehouse management, and now, of course, web services through their cloud service provision. And this is an example of how digitization, collection of information has led to new business opportunities. Just now we had an example of how somebody wanted to do micro farming, right? This is an actual commercialized application already, whereby you can do urban farming using Cartesian mapping based on different squares on your sort of like portable farm in an urban setting, and you can actually measure how each box within that little farm produces the right kind of output, and you can optimize it based on the data that you collect. This is an example of local homegrown technology, TM R&D, smart helmet, whereby you can have a camera with certain sensors in the camera for people who are working in difficult conditions, challenging conditions. If they fall down, for example, you'll be able to contact that person, and you'll be able to see whether that person is okay or not, how severe those injuries are, and then you can design the appropriate response. Industry 4.0 also creates new opportunities, especially for manufacturing services. You can see how different companies, that are local companies, are trying to hook up those different manufacturing machines within the factories in order to collect data in a very cost-efficient manner so that you can improve the manufacturing efficiency. This is a very good story of a local company. How many of you here have heard of Vitrox? Okay, I think many of the older entrepreneurs, or more seasoned entrepreneurs rather, would have heard of them. This is a company that started in a flat in Penang, doing visual inspection machines. Now they've expanded into their own campus on Batu Kawan in Penang. They've listed their operations, and because of IoT as well as the huge amount of processing power that many of their machines use, they are doing a lot of high-end imaging testing for semiconductors, and also using that for other industries as well. And they've expanded into their V1 application, which is a platform to be able to collect information and display it in ways that can improve manufacturing operations, not just for their company, but for other companies as well. Right? So there's, of course, Grab, people know about how it's gone into different areas. Katsana is also a road safety device, local company, collecting data, driving data, using algorithms in order to score drivers so that you can collect insurance premiums based on how safe a driver is. And this is very relevant to Malaysia now because we are moving towards a risk-based insurance pricing system for car drivers. Right? This is Industry 4.0 supply chain used by BMW. And then, of course, we know about Netflix and Spotify, how they use big data in order to generate algorithms to try to curate different things for you to go and listen to, as well as for you to watch. Of course, nowadays, most people have a limited number of choices, even within the larger space for Netflix and Spotify. And that's why I think this kind of curation becomes even more important. IBM Watson, this is a smart algorithm in order to capture data to answer different questions that different people have asked in the education, legal, as well as the medical field. This is a local company, a digital autopsy, that captures 3D images of cadavers, and they enable different medical specialists to do online autopsies. So actually, after you do the capture of the cadavers, you can get rid of the body. You can, bury the body. You can incinerate it, and then you still have these kind of images for you to do your digital autopsy. And this is a Malaysian company that's based in the UK, right? So these are all different examples. Because of time constraints, I'm just going to quickly look through emerging opportunities. You can see how with the increase in the number of devices that are being connected to the internet, there are a lot more data analytics as well as IoT applications that we can look into. This is a self-driving car, a self-driving autonomous car app that is locally made, which is able to turn any normal car into an autonomous one from a data capture perspective. This is, Open Bionics, which is trying to use data capture for customization of prosthetics. Same thing with Soulmaker for shoes, right? We have, Foldit using different cloud computing to use different analytics in order to look at protein foldings as a model solving puzzle. One of my more favorite items, waiting for it to be rolled out in Malaysia. This is just a test of age group sort of like dynamics. How many of you here know what Twitch is? Twitch, okay? So the gamers here know, right? The rest maybe not so sure. So Twitch is a platform whereby you can watch people play games. And it's one of the fastest growing platforms around the world. Google Stadia is a little bit different in the sense that it wants to allow you to have access to technology that you can use to play PlayStation games on your normal console that may not have the kind of capabilities as a high-end computer or high-end PlayStation. You can just Chromecast this particular app onto your television. How many of you here use Chromecast? It's the best 150 ringgit that you can spend, right? You can cast YouTube and different devices there. And the only sad thing is that it's not launched in Malaysia yet because we need to upgrade our speed, internet speed to about 25 megabits per second. But we're getting there with the help of Gobin's ministry. I'm sure that this will be launched pretty soon in Malaysia. Right? Another potential blockchain disruptor, Arcade City. I'm sure that Jasmine will be talking a lot more about blockchain later, so I won't steal her time. And these are just some examples. TM Open Application Platform to allow different service providers as well as manufacturing companies who have a lot of data to upload their data so that you can create data analytics in order to improve different manufacturing processes. Right? So this is the last part, funding and starting out. We have grants, rewards, assets, debt, equity. All these are different models that are being used by different companies. And I think the point I want to emphasize here is that as a government, we should not be looking only to give grants. Even now, in MITI for Industry 4.0 rollout, we focus much more on matching grants. Right? And then there are different ways in which you can look at different models of funding, which includes equity, which includes crowdsourcing, and a few others. And there are already different organizations that are involved here in this, including funding societies, for example, that started in Singapore and has expanded here in Malaysia. Right? There's crowdfunding models. These are some of the companies that are involved. There's also a local example of how Oxwhite, for example, minimizes its inventory. It does pre-sales. I'm wearing an Oxwhite shirt now, doing some advertising for them. And it really is a minimum overheads because they only have to spend on stock when there are orders. And this is one example of a very successful homegrown company that use technology, that use Facebook primarily in order to use this model to launch and sell their products. So with that, I'd like to thank you once again, and I hope that this has given you some framework in terms of the opportunities for digitization. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here very much. My name is Jasmine, and currently CEO of NEM Malaysia. Tomorrow, we don't know. And that's the thing about Industrial Revolution 4.0. Things change in a blink, and we never expect to stay the same for more than a year. So it's not the fault of millennials that change jobs. It's just how things are moving right now. So don't say that we are Rolling Stones. We are not. I am a Malaysian. I love Malaysia. Born and raised in KL. Mom from Johor Segamat. Dad was a Singaporean but decided to stay on this side of the divide when there was a cut. Very ordinary middle-income family. Middle to lower when we started, and then through hard work, a little bit middle and slightly higher. Now, in my growing up years, banking, lawyer, accountant, that's what Dad wants us to be. I ended up in banking. So first job in Citibank. But I had a passion. I have a passion for young people. So I started mentoring young people. And what were we going to do with all this young energy? We started going out to villages and we were bringing things, say we'll help out. One of the things we found out was the living conditions of Orang Asli. It was quite bad in some places. So one of the first projects we did was we got funding on social media to help paint a village. And in the course of painting a village, this house came to our attention. And a man actually lives there. He lives there through rain, he lives there through sunshine. That's his bed. And we were appalled. Young people are amazing, so they decided that we're going to do a flat pack house, because to build a full house is too difficult, and it requires skilled labor, it requires a lot more investment. So we raised a house in 3 days. That is the workforce that built this house for the gentleman so that he no longer has to live in this. This happened back in year 2009. This was the start of Project Epic, and it quickly became Epic Homes, and then now it's become Epic DNA. Now, when we first started, when we first painted the first village, it was all social media. We got tin cans and money from social media donation. And then when we built this house, we went to ask developers for leftover materials so that we can work with it and raise the home. That was the first home. The 4 co-founders of Epic, banker, now ex-banker, 2 media and communication student, and 1 ACCA graduate. Nobody has any building skills. And this is what we've raised. And with Epic, to date, they have built more than 200 over Orang Asli homes. They have helped in the Kuantan flood relief, building more than 40 homes within 2 weeks, all by sheer volunteer power. I encourage you, please, go on to the Epic DNA website and check them out. Today, Epic, as it stands, with the help of social media, with the help of technology, with the help of peer-to-peer interaction on the internet, we are helping other people do good work. We are helping other people reach out to their community. What does EPIC stand for? EPIC stands for Extraordinary People Impacting Community. So we were vehement in not leaving out the word ordinary, because it is ordinary people that are made extraordinary because you decided that you want to impact community. And the media, social media, technology is there to help you. There are many people with willing pockets. When we were building this house, at the birth of EPIC, the funding came from a banker who was taking a break. The little savings I had funded the start of EPIC. Out of a room somewhere, we didn't pay ourselves salary. There was no sustainability model. I think Mitch may have a word with me about that. But what has happened today with Epic Homes is we have become self-sustainable. How? We have offered the entire home building experience as a team building experience, getting corporates to come and support the effort, while we take about 10% on the top of it to pay salaries to those who are doing it full-time. So that's what Epic Homes have become, and they have become a training company offering training, because one of the things that we have done is we have built bridges on community between the urban and the rural. One of the things that we were doing is we were taking urban volunteers, young people from the city, who many do not understand that chicken have feathers and that they can run around wild and how an egg is laid. I'm not kidding you, it's true. And brought them here in an environment with the Orang Asli. You say you're helping the Orang Asli, but actually you're getting an education in return. Understanding how people live without internet, some without electricity, some without running water. So now, having helped co-found Epic, one of the things that came to mind, and that's where I met Kian Ming, was voter registration. because what the experiences with the Orang Asli told me that we need to have a voice in government. And that voice, everybody has a voice. It's a question of exercise. So we started Voice Your Choice. And Voice Your Choice also leveraged on the power of social media, on the power of technology. If I was doing this, even back in the 90s, there was no way we could have achieved any of these results. Voice Your Choice started a movement. The year we did this, we inspired both sides of the divide, the parties, both BN and Pakatan, to also get their youth to move and start voter registration. That year we had double of the voters registered. This was according to the report from Election Commission. So with Voice Your Choice, I came to understand a little bit more about what technology can do for us. And that started my foray into learning, self-learning on technology. Now, all this is happening. Fortunately, I also have bills to pay. So Maybank took me in. And I was working for the bank, all in all, a good 12 years. One of the things I did in the bank was digital alliances, digital banking. And that opened up my eyes because in my time in Maybank, one of the things that Maybank afforded me to do was I get to see everything. Being one of the largest banks in the region, whenever people want to come in, WeChat, Alipay, Google, Apple, whenever they want to come into the region, we get a call and say, hey, you know, on the payment side, is there something we can do to work? So I've seen a lot of the technologies that Dr. Ong was talking about, and it's amazing. But you know what? I feel sad because a lot of my own people, Malaysians, one, may not be financially included. Two, may not have the technology literacy. And that's kind of started me on a little journey of self-discovery, which has led me to this little quote. A change is coming. We know Industrial Revolution 4.0 is going to sweep globally. Is Malaysia going to be left out or not? That's where I look to our government of the day to lead us into the next revolution, where I believe Malaysia can take a leap, a quantum leap forward. And I believe being a blockchain hub in the region enables this. And I would love to talk to more people about this. But as the words of Harvard Business Review says, blockchain is not a disruptive technology, it's a foundational technology. This technology is going to build new foundations for socio-economic movements, for economic pillars. One of the cases that I'm going to cite for blockchain, in pursuant to what we were doing in Voice Your Choice. Okay, just a little quick thing about blockchain. It's a distributed ledger, just in case you guys don't know. Distributed ledger, this is the difference. It's decentralized, it's immutable, so you cannot change it. You can write on a new record, meaning today I own this clicker. Tomorrow I pass this clicker to Andrew. The fact that I have ever owned this clicker will always stay on the record, on the ledger. The next person who owns it is Andrew, so he will be the new owner, and so on and so forth. So it's immutable. You cannot change the records, and it's peer-to-peer. It's empowering and it's enabling because it removes the need for a third party. There are many books written about the distributed ledger technology. One of the things that is called is the trust machine. So moving on. I'm not sure if you all recognize this, but I was in that crowd. Tear gas while going through it is not fun. After that, talking about the tails can be a bit funny. But it was something that we had to do as a nation, to be heard. Because I'm a firm believer of Voice Your Choice, right? Now, why were we on the streets in Bersih? We wanted clean and fair election. How do we enable it, knowing that the database of the electoral roll is subjected, can be subjected to changes, can be manipulated? It just takes somebody in power, in a position of administration to do that. And that's where blockchain is supposed to stop it. That's where blockchain will not allow you to do something like that. See, because of the peer-to-peer, the immutable, and the distributed ledger technology, South Korea, Japan, and Switzerland are already experimenting voting on blockchain. NEM has also helped do a POC for the Ukrainian government for voting on blockchain. And this is where I will conclude my presentation. Blockchain is not a disruptive technology. We're not here to disrupt. We're here to help found new foundation. And that's where I believe Malaysia can take the next leap forward with blockchain. Thank you very much.
So my name is Ana Roca Castro, and it's not complete here, but I'm the founder of Genius Plaza. Our mission is to ignite the genius in every child, especially those in underserved communities. So because we know, as Mitch says, geniuses are spread equally among all zip codes, but opportunities are not. So I like to take you to an internal journey. And close your eyes and think of that person that ignited the genius in you when you were a child. 2 seconds. By the end of the day, make sure you thank that person. Send them a tweet, a phone call, you know, the good old phone calls. Those are really good too, if they're still alive. Or thank them in heaven, wherever they are. So think about that. Those geniuses, the little geniuses, especially those the underserved. I arrived in the United States as an immigrant when I was 14, and I had already won the calculus competition back in my country, in the Dominican Republic. And when I was a senior in high school, and when they realized that I didn't speak the language, they put me in the bilingual math class, which was a 4th grade class. So I was so upset that I dropped out. And my volleyball coach, thanks to the volleyball coach, I just played volleyball all, you know, for 3 months on the streets with drug dealers. And my volleyball coach, who just, she wasn't my volleyball coach, she saw me playing volleyball and pretty much rescued me and made my entire curriculum, advocated for me to make that entire curriculum for me, personalized for me, before technology was even a thing. So I found that woman, Shana, who ignited the genius in me. And thanks to her, I finished high school, I finished college, joined the United Nations, all thanks to her. She really helped me throughout my career. And then I started, you know, I became a software engineer, implemented Oracle systems for the UN. And then later, I started Genius Plaza. So when I started the company, it was my second company, I met my other champion, Frida Kapor. And Frida, I remember I didn't even know investing was a thing. You know, I didn't know people invested in other people. It wasn't part of my world. I was in little upstate New York. And I met Mitch and Frida at the United Nations, and pretty much I had already sold the previous company to the government, and it was a social network for diplomats and ambassadors. That was the world I was coming from. And I remember Frida said, "What are you working on now?" And I told her, well, now I want to do something in education because, you know, that was cool, but I didn't even know that was a startup and I was an entrepreneur, but now I know. And she said, I would like to invest. And I said, what do you mean? And she kept saying, you know, that's the thing, people do invest. So that was the beginning of a new journey for me, the journey of entrepreneurship. And I realized very soon, I mean, my entire life, I wanted to put my 2 passions, education based on that experience, and Shana kind of pulling me out of the dropout world, and I was just going to be one statistic. And using technology, which really saved my life later on when I discovered technology. I always say I discovered my inner geek. And I wanted to use technology for something completely different, to help help ignite those little geniuses in our kids. So why not use technology to create? So I don't know if you've seen most of the education technologies right now pretty much take the traditional book and put them on ebook. Take the traditional exams and put them into exercises, and the kids are there clicking and clicking and clicking. We focus more on the approach of using peer-to-peer learning and having the kids create to teach, reteach what they've learned. So as a result, we move our kids from passive learners to protagonists of their learning experience. And with that, we have a global collaboration. And you see kids from Peru teaching kids in Miami, kids in New York teaching kids in Uganda, and it's really amazing to see the way they're teaching each other through ebooks, through games, through videos, and so on. Really an amazing experience. So why not use technology to create? And then why not use technology to make an impact? So if technology doesn't make a positive impact, then it's negative technology, right? So why not use technology to uplift and to level the playing field? So as a result, we have over 50 million students in the world. We have the highest gain when it comes to SAT and exams, exam preparations, mainly because our kids create. They are the protagonist of that learning experience. And our journey has been based on our lived experience. So Genius Plaza is still the most diverse startup in the country. And we started in the 6 to 18, so kindergarten to high school. And then we realized that our kids in the underserved communities were coming to preschool not ready for to kindergarten, not ready. So we went down to Genius Pre-K. And last year, we realized that our babies were coming to kindergarten, to preschool, not ready. They didn't know what a book looked like. They couldn't sit still. Things that are so easy to help a child when you start really, really, really early on. So our whole goal at that point became, how can we help track and improve the academic and health outcomes of our children? And we realized that there was a problem. We were all working in silos, so health was working in isolation from education. And we know that education is the first social determinant of health, so how can they work separately? Countries are working in silos, departments are working in silos. And why don't we use technology to collaborate? So technology to create, technology to collaborate. Why don't we do that? And we started Genius Village. So Genius Village pretty much brings everyone together. So bringing the student information systems, the preschools, the daycares, together with the pediatrician, the healthcare providers, immunization records, all in government. So now we're moving from the classroom to systemic change. So we really want to help governments and leaders bring systemic solutions to the problem of isolation. And at the end, the children are the ones that are paying for this disconnect. So the main question at this point is, why don't we use technology to serve? So imagine if we use technology to serve and to unite and to collaborate. At this point, I would like to ask you one thing. Think of which child you're going to ignite the genius in today. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Sinan Ismail. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Digital Durian. So let me start. What do we do at Digital Durian? We're an animation company. We create fun and meaningful IPs or cartoons for young children all around the world. It's okay? Right, I want to make a statement where we do not sell durians. Okay. So this is what we do. We're actually creators of Didi and Friends and Omar Hana. They're both preschool IPs, and I'll just talk a little bit about our products, right? So DD and Friends is a fun and musical entertainment cartoon on YouTube. We started 5 years ago, and to date we have 1.4 billion views on YouTube. Thanks. 1.8 million subscribers, and it's already in 7 languages, including English, Spanish, Portuguese, Hindi, and some others. Right? Then our second IP, launched just 2 years ago, is called Omar and Hana. It's basically a fun Islamic cartoon for young children. It now has 800 million views on YouTube in 2 years, also 1.8 million subscribers. And in this Ramadan, it's going to be aired in 30 countries all around the world. Okay. On top of that, we also do licensing and merchandising. So we have more than 1,000 products sold nationwide in Malaysia. And this is some pictures of fans and our merchandise. The Becha one there is unofficial. Right. Okay, so I think I'll go straight to my point. How do you create value for people? Right? This is a picture of my parents, my late father and my mom. Right? So both of them are educators. They were educators, they were lecturers. They went to Azhar University when they were studying. My mom did her PhD in London. And how did they create value for people? It's through the classroom, right? They teach and they teach hundreds and maybe thousands of students throughout their years. And this is me, maybe cuter than now. But like any parent, they had that wish for their son to become an educator too, right? But what happened to me? I chose to become an entrepreneur. Was it because I wanted to create value for people? No, because I love football and I want to watch football tengah malam so I can wake up late the next day. True story, true story. Right. So I chose to do animation. Why? Was it to create value for people? No, again, because I love this guy, Optimus Prime, and I just love watching cartoons when I was young. So when you put this into context, Sinan started a cartoon business so he could watch football and wake up late the next day. It's not inspiring at all, I know, but this is how I started, and it was lucky for me, it happened 11 years ago, right? So I just want to share what I learned within my 11-year journey, and I'll try to make it fast. So the first one is let passion drive you. Again, I love cartoons so much, and somehow I found myself in the School of Mathematics at USM. So I actually studied mathematics, I don't know why, don't ask me. But then I self-taught myself, which is great, the internet was there. And I worked hard for 3 different companies from 2004 to 2007. And then I opened up Digital Durian Enterprise, doing multimedia. We climbed up and then it went down, like any other business, I guess. We pivoted into weddings. And we did wedding cards, wedding gifts, and also wedding videography. So this is my second time meeting Dr. Suryana Ibrahim. The first time was actually at your house. I did videograph his daughter back in those days. So I was a videographer going to weddings. But that was then, right? Yeah. So now I'm doing what I love, and I just want to emphasize that when you do what you love, you actually create wow results, right? You create things which you feel like your job is not a job. I think that's the most important thing about doing what you love. You're passionate about it, and when you do it, you just create that extra. And for those entrepreneurs out there, or people who want to become entrepreneurs, please, if you can do what you love, I think the results will be beyond your imagination. Right? The second point is embrace technology. So like any other cartoon starting in 2012, 2013, we wanted to go into TV. So we always thought that do your cartoon, go into TV, and you succeed lah. Okay. So we pitched to local broadcasters, we pitched to international broadcasters. With the help of MDAC, we went to markets, and the feedback was rejection, which is normal, right, for a startup. But what happened is we kind of like forced our way to pivot to YouTube, right? And this was 2012, 2013. That time, I don't think a lot of Malaysians were already on YouTube as creators. And the feedback which we got was, are you for real? You must be crazy. Broadcasters won't buy after you go on YouTube. YouTube, you're wasting your time, and how do you make money on YouTube? So the kind of baik one, they say good luck lah. And we really needed that. So what happened is, it's not just based on luck. We actually use data. So we did Google Analytics and Google Keyword Search. And in 2012, we found out that actually 15,000 people were searching for lagu kanak-kanak on Google and YouTube. But nobody was actually feeding that, right? So we saw there was a gap there. So we took the opportunity to take our characters and convert them into singing chickens, right? And we launched our YouTube channel in May 2014 with the hope of hitting 1 million views by December 31st. And what happened is we actually hit 5.5 million views. It was overwhelming. It's something, it was great. It gave us semangat. But again, a lot of people tell us that it was by chance and by luck. Yes, entrepreneurship, business is about that. But at the same time, you need to use data, you need to use technology, whatever you have to make it work. Right? So that's my second point. And my third point goes back to creating value. Like I mentioned just now, and Sinan started a cartoon business so he could watch football and wake up late the next day. That's totally crap. And I'm a changed man now, thankfully. And I didn't watch football yesterday. United lost, but it's okay. But for us, who do we create value for? And I think this is pretty important for me to share. Obviously, the children, right? So the children sing, they dance, they laugh, they learn a thing or two, and all of our songs, all of our episodes has something to learn about, moral values, of course. And it's not just that. We create value for parents and teachers, because parents and teachers want this type of content for their kids, right? We are fun, safe, and educational content. So we create value for the parents and teachers too. Teachers use our content without our permission, but it's great. It's about creating value for people, right? Who else do we create value for? For business partners, right? And this is beyond animation. So some people say, okay lah, you create value, you're happy because you do animation. But no, business is about connecting with other people. It's about creating value for other people. And it's not just about business partners and you say, nak kurang sikit lah harga, murah-murah sikit. It's not just that, right? So whatever you do, you have to create value for your business partners too, / investors, right? Next is society. Okay, this may be a little bit far-fetched, but if you look on the internet, there's a lot of studies and even research from Harvard and also Stanford saying that if a child is inculcated with good values from a young age, and you can see the impact when they grow up to become citizens, all adults one day. So we believe that what we're doing now, in that sense, we may not see the difference yet, but hopefully one day we can build a better nation, a better Malaysia, and also a better world, inshallah. And last of all is to create value for your team. Again, entrepreneurs, and this is something which you always kind of forget about. But to be honest, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for this all-star team I have. 95 of us doing animation day in, day out. I create value for them, they create value for other people. I hold on to the word that I win only when my team wins. And I think it's important for entrepreneurs to hold on to that. So our mission is to make people happy. Alhamdulillah that what I learned from my parents is teaching. I love doing that, but I'm using a different platform, using technology now. And we're hoping to make a difference in the world. Go and make a difference in the world. And please ask yourself this question. And how do you create value for people? That's all.
My name is Ganesh Bunga. I'm a serial entrepreneur, startup investor, and also industry leader through PCOM, the National ICT Association of Malaysia, where I'm the chairman. Now, since Mitch is here from the US, I thought I'll share a bit of my learnings from doing a bit of business in the Silicon Valley over the last 10 years. More importantly, I'll also share a bit about my failures there as well, because you learn more from your failures than your successes. I first started doing business in the Valley in 2007 when Yahoo actually approached my company. My company at that time was called MOL. We were online game payment platform where we had 200,000 users, out of which 5% of those users spent 200 ringgit or $50 a month. Now Yahoo at that time was expanding into Southeast Asia and they had 200 million users, but they didn't know how to monetize their users. So they came to us and said, hey, if our 200 million gets 1% of your, if 1% of 200 million users actually generate 50 ringgit a month, that's a lot of money. And so they said, why don't we acquire you and merge and grow this business? And we said, actually, that's a great idea. No large internet company has come to Asia and bought a local company. That was 2007. And we were trading on the local stock exchange at that time at about 25, 30 million ringgit. And they offered us 35 million US to buy the company. And we were excited. Then we read this article. So at that time, Mark Zuckerberg turned down Yahoo's offer to buy the whole company for $1 billion. We thought to ourselves, actually it's easier to turn a $1 billion company to $2 billion, or today $200 billion, than to turn a company from 0 to $1 billion. And similarly, to turn a company from 0 to 25 million is more difficult than to turn a $25 million company to maybe a $1 billion company. So we turned down Yahoo. And right. And then what happened was we went online to see which other large internet portal had as much traffic as Yahoo. And we found this social network. The social network was called Friendster. Friendster had 100 million registered users. They hadn't got into gaming. Zynga wasn't formed yet. And we thought, hey, we do a partnership with them. It would have been a great idea. And so we write an email to Kleiner Perkins, who was the shareholder of Friendster at that time, and say, hey, we're from Asia, we understand this market, we have content, we have monetization, we can help turn Friendster into a profitable venture. Why don't we do a commercial deal, an investment, or even an acquisition? They never replied my email. They must have thought, what is Malaysian crazy guy thinking that he can buy a Silicon Valley social network? Right? And, but then 2 years later, what happened is Friendster went all around the world to look at how to monetize and decided to look for the best payment partner for them. And 2 years later, we entered into a payment partnership with Friendster, where we actually rolled out our payment and gaming to their platform. And then what happened was Friendster's board of directors flew down to Manila and took the ride from the Manila airport to Manila city. And they saw poor people on the left and right of the street. And they said, you know what, we'll never be able to monetize this market. It's just too poor for us. And they decided to sell the company, right? So they appointed JP Morgan to sell they appointed Morgan Stanley to sell the company. And of course, the Friendster management recommended us. Morgan Stanley told them we'll never buy the company. 2 months later, we ended up buying the company. We actually paid 38 million US to buy the company, and we actually rolled out our payment platform on the network as well. A couple of months later, another large social network saw that what we had done and said, you know what, actually we want to partner with you too. And we want to do what Friendster has done. Guess what's the name of that social network? It was Facebook. So Facebook partnered with us, and we were the first physical payment network where we rolled out Facebook payments in Southeast Asia through 7-Eleven outlets across the region. Subsequent to that, I started building a lot of relationships in the Silicon Valley. Vaughn Smith is the head of corporate development in Facebook. He actually does all the shopping, company shopping for Facebook. Eduardo Severin became my good friend. Eduardo Severin is the co-founder of Facebook. If you guys saw the social network, he was here in KL and I was his host. I actually took him to WIP in KL, right? So I started building a network in the Silicon Valley, and building a network, I think, is key for you to build business anywhere, especially in the Valley as well. Now, subsequent to that, MOL started growing. We took on a lot of debt to then buy similar online game payment companies across the region. So we bought companies in Turkey, we bought companies in Vietnam, in Indonesia, And we quickly became the leading online game payment platform throughout the world. 25% of the non-credit card game payments actually went through our platform. We had partners like Zynga, Blizzard, that all were our major clients as well. Now at that time we said, hey, we're everywhere, but we want to also be in the US. So we actually then bought a company called Rixty, which was in the US. And what Rixty enabled was you could actually put coins into coin machines and actually get gaming credits. Right? So we actually acquired the company from a Silicon Valley venture capitalist and then started trying to expand in the US. But it didn't work because not many Americans were willing to pay physical cash for online games. They would use their credit cards. So our plan failed. But luckily, Rixty was managed to expand into Brazil. And Brazil became their biggest market. So majority of their sales actually expanded through Brazil. And Brazil again became one of MOL's key countries as well. Now, throughout that time, I was actually traveling all around the world pretty extensively. Jet lag all the time. I wake up in the morning not knowing which city I actually woke up to. So what happened was on 24th October 2013, one day I couldn't wake up at all. I had a stroke, right? So I couldn't walk. I was on wheelchair for almost a month. And life hit me with a brick. It was one of the hardest times of my life. Now, we had done a lot of acquisition. We had took on a lot of debt. And it was actually a very tough time in my life because I was worried what will happen to my company, what will happen to the 400 people in my company as well. We were in the process of doing an IPO. And what we did was we decided to actually continue with that whole process of appointing bankers, lawyers. And if you all know, to do a worldwide IPO, you actually have to travel twice all around the world. So you have to actually travel in 2 weeks from Kuala Lumpur to Hong Kong to Singapore to Hong Kong to San Francisco to London to New York, all in 2 weeks. So we did that process. I did that in July 2014. And then on 9th of October 2014, within a year of my stroke, we actually listed the company on the NASDAQ, becoming the first Southeast Asian internet company to actually list on the NASDAQ. Now, unfortunately, we were badly advised. And on day one of the IPO, our share price went down 20%. Life hit me with a brick again. In the morning of that IPO, I was worth 80 million US. In the evening, I was worth 50 million US. It was the pinnacle of my career, but also one of the saddest days of my life. And that was actually the time that it hit me too hard at that time. And so I actually decided to leave the company after a couple of months because investors were not happy. And I went into semi-retirement so that I could focus on my recovery. So for 2 years, I was basically mentoring young startups in Penang. And after that, what happened was I actually was invited by Google to mentor at the Google Launchpad, which is the Google Accelerator in the US. And while I was there, I actually found an accelerator called GrowthX and an academy called GrowthX. And the whole thesis of GrowthX is when I started my first business in the year 2000, technology was the challenging part. Technology was the challenge. Developing a website, developing a web service was the hardest part. But today, developing an app, developing a website, selling online is easy. Everybody can do it. It's a commodity. So today, the number one reason that startups fail is no longer technology, but it's go-to-market. So the critical success factor for any startup today is not the technology, it's not how do you create a website. It's how do you market the website. And I found an accelerator called GrowthX that turned that whole process of going to market into a methodology that could be taught. Right? So the whole process of market discovery, market messaging, market outreach, and market results was actually turned into a methodology by 4 sales founders in the US. And they were actually teaching this as an academy and an accelerator. I find it very intriguing because I thought this was exactly what Asia needs to build the next large unicorn. That's the first whiteboard when I met GrowthX on how to set up GrowthX in Malaysia. And we managed to license GrowthX and actually bring it to Malaysia with the support of MDEC. I also ended up investing in a lot of the companies that I was mentoring. And in 2018, last year, we actually launched GrowthX here in Malaysia, being the first branch of GrowthX Silicon Valley outside the US here in Malaysia, to help local startups actually penetrate the Southeast Asian region. And we do all of this today under Commerce.Asia, which is my ecosystem builder. Commerce.Asia has invested into e-commerce enablers. Now, what are e-commerce enablers? These are the people that help merchants sell online. So it's a gold rush. E-commerce is going to grow from $25 billion to $100 billion over the next 7 years in this region. When there's a gold rush, you can either mine for gold or you can provide the shovels and teach people how to mine gold. We invest in the shovels and we teach people how to mine that gold, and we focus on SMEs. So that's what we do today. Now I'd like to end by sharing 3 key learnings of what I learned from doing business in the Valley. The first learning is really you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You cannot connect the dots looking forward, right? So you must always believe that you're destined to do something. If you're destined to become Prime Minister, you will become Prime Minister. The second is life's always going to hit you with a brick. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The stroke made me physically weaker, maybe, but it also made me mentally stronger, right? And more importantly, an even better person than what I was before. And the third key learning is, a lot of people ask me, how did you list your company in the US? Well, it's all about the mind. If you say you can do it, you will be able to do it. Control your mind, control the world. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Terima kasih atas kesudian sudah hadir dan saudara kami yang datang melancarkan program ini. I am, like most of you, extremely delighted to be here to listen to our success stories that give us that strengthen our resolve and belief that we have this enormous potential in this country. And thanks to this, the friends who has come and enlightened us what has been achieved thus far, though not known to many Malaysians. I am new to this digital economy because in the years I was in prison, there was no phone and computer. I was back to the traditional mode of learning. Books and the classics, pen and paper. But I am convinced that if we want to propel the economy forward, we have to accept the dictates and demand of the time. That include what we have heard today about digitalization, digital economy. I've spent the last many months, Andrew and the rest, virtually listening to them, learning from them what all these Greek terms are about. AI, IoT, which I've not heard when I was in prison. So I'm fortunate because I have some very dedicated friends committed to the cause, want me to support and engineer this program forward. That's why I'm here today. That is why we launched the DNA23 together with Gobind Singh. Now, we also talk about diversity and inclusiveness because it's also my concern. I don't want this country to move forward and ignore the plight of the poor. Malays, Chinese, Iban, Indians, doesn't matter. The poor, the marginalized are human beings, not because of their color or their religious beliefs. therefore, the focus, whilst we continue to engineer this new program, reform of our economy, and it has to be towards meritocracy and sophistication in these related industries, we cannot ignore, as I said, the plight of the urban and rural poor. And another cause of concern, it must not lead to further inequality in this country. Now, you have heard about diversity. There's strength in all of us if we are given adequate opportunities. All these new sophisticated terms that we use must be shared by every single citizen of our country. That is our mission. And I'm very fortunate to know Mitch Kapoor and Frida since 2005, because we've served together in the invitation of former Vice President Al Gore, another dear friend of ours. Now, Mitch is, of course, brilliant in this field. And he was quite instrumental in introducing me to all these gadgets and new terms. We were talking about Uber, I think about 2010, when he mentioned, and we were just polite, none of us were convinced. But because he was the expert, you know, with Lotus, with Steve Jobs and the rest, in the earlier period, none of us argued. We were just polite, but okay, Mitch, you have a say. That's it. So I am personally very delighted to have him as guest of our family in Kuala Lumpur and to invite him. In fact, we arranged this program just to fit his schedule at no cost. And because he's passionate about these things. I mean, he has been one of the great, instrumental supporters for these startups. The Latinos, the blacks, those who are not given in ordinary terms, enough opportunity to rise up and to survive in that very fierce, competitive world at the Silicon Valley. So I'm just using this brief opportunity. If you ask, I'm not giving a speech. I've given too many speeches in Rantau. Oh my goodness. So, to reiterate the need to support the initiative of the government and our DNA23. Second, to keep on reminding ourselves that it must be done cautiously, knowing the diversity. They need to recognize the importance of all racial groups, rural and urban. They could be used and utilized as a source of strength instead of weakness, to create greater bond of unity among Malaysians rather than divide. And finally, of course, to welcome Mitch and Frida. So Frida, of course, is not going to speak today, but she's wonderful. Aziza mentioned to me, in fact, complained this morning, why wasn't Frida given the floor? That's not my fault, it's Andrew's fault. So politicians have the responsibility, but not accountability. This is not us, huh? I'm just quoting a former chief minister of one state. When he had this enormous problem, water problem in the state of Malacca, he said, yes, I'm responsible, but not accountable. But that's the past. So, Mitch, I mean, I do not choose to repeat, give all the accolades that you have achieved thus far. Is there? I mean, most of them are known. I mean, you are known to them. And some of my friends, Sunway and Star, said, well, I think because your presence, there's so many of you come. No, these guys are, those who most of you are present, highly interested in what I have to say. They have never appeared in my charamas. But they come actually to listen to you. So, terima kasih. Thank you very much.
That has to be the best introduction I've ever gotten. Nothing will ever top it. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I've enjoyed the stories of the entrepreneurs. Really resonate also, Dr. Sri, with your vision for the country. And in fact, we feel the work that we're trying to do in the US in supporting entrepreneurs has the same goal of uplifting people at the bottom. And that's what I want to talk about today, is to share what we've been doing and those lessons and learnings, because the things that have worked well, the things that we're still trying to figure out how to do, because I think they have broad value everywhere, and hopefully in Malaysia. This is our building in Oakland, California, where all of our activity is based. But I want to say, before I get into this, that I'm really here as half of a team, and you've heard Frida mentioned before. You should understand that the architecture of what we do at K4 Capital, the principles by which we invest, the things that matter are really very much a joint product of ours. So even though Frida is not on stage today, would you just mind standing up for a moment and let the audience recognize you? Thank you. This work is as much hers as it is mine. We have 3 organizations that are based in that building. I'm mostly going to talk about K4 Capital, which invests in seed stage tech startups. But I'm also going to talk about our nonprofit activities at the K4 Center, and also an education program called SMASH. They do different things, but they all share a set of common values and all work at the intersection of technology and social justice. Now, my origin story, very briefly. On the left, seated at that keyboard, is a much younger me. And it was a program that I went to that changed my life because it gave me my first hands-on access to computers and set me on my life course. It gave me an opportunity. And that, in fact, opportunity was sponsored by the US government, which at the time was very concerned. The Soviet Union had recently put the first satellite in space. They were ahead. And the US was trying to catch up, and so the government was funding programs for students and high school students in math and science to try to catch up. And it was a life changer for me, even though it was just a 6-week program, because it got me interested in computers. It was rare then to have a chance to be on them, and it's what got me going. By the way, the computer is the thing to the right that looks like a gigantic oil burner. And the smartwatch you may have on your wrist has about 5 million times the computing power of that thing, but it was enough to get started. On the right is one of the students in our Summer Math and Science Honors Academy, Hailey, who's actually now graduated with a computer science degree from UC Berkeley. I was given an opportunity then. It changed my life. We believe strongly that everybody should have an opportunity to develop themselves, and we run programs to help those who don't get those opportunities have a chance. And for me, it completes the circle. I like to say this. Anna quoted me. It's worth saying again. Genius is evenly distributed by zip code. I might say postal code here, I think. And opportunity and access are not. I really believe that in a visceral kind of way. So our programs and activities are designed to create opportunity and access for those who do not have it. And so we invest in entrepreneurs from a wide variety of backgrounds, and we invest in businesses that expand opportunity and access for everyone. But to wind the clock back, that's not where I started. You saw in '66, hands-on with a computer. The thing that helped make my reputation was this company called Lotus, which some of you, if you're old enough, have heard of or remember. And if you're a college student now, you have no idea what I'm talking about. That's okay. It was the very high-growth software company of the 1980s. The Lotus 123 spreadsheet was what everybody used back before there was Microsoft Excel. It was the reason that people bought their first personal computer. It was the product that actually drove the business world to adopt personal computers. And that chart of revenues shows that really within a couple of years of when we started, we went from 0 to more than $500 million in revenue, and a public offering and a worldwide operation. I was in my early 30s. I was running a public company. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. There was a lot of on-the-job training involved, but it was an amazing ride in that early period. But I'll tell you something, it's the growth and the success is not the thing that I'm most proud of. It was the culture initiatives. And let me explain why our company culture was so important. I grew up as a kind of a misfit, good at computers, not so good at social relationships, always very much an outsider in school and in life, never really fit in. And so when the company became successful, I thought, rather than, say, commissioning a company to build a rocket to Mars, what I wanted to do was to create the kind of company that even a misfit like me would feel included, would feel welcome, would feel like they could really participate. And in fact, Frida came to work for the company because her job description said, your job will be to make Lotus the most progressive employer of any company in the US. And that began our collaboration as a professional relationship. And we did a lot of things very, very early. We had a diversity council with employee representation. We had, probably the most significant thing, we surveyed employees. We wanted to know what they really thought. So it was anonymous and confidential. We asked the employees, how well does your immediate supervisor actually live the company's values day to day? And we aggregated that data together, and then we closed the circle by tying a portion of the supervisor's bonus to how well they did on that score. So if you're going to say values really matter, you need to measure whether people are living up to them and give people an incentive to do that. And I think companies are still not doing that. And we had a number of other firsts. We were the first tech company to sign on to the Sullivan Principles. Those were the commitment not to do business with South Africa during the apartheid regime. And we were the first corporate sponsor of an AIDS walk. So I had the impulse that I wanted to see everybody treated fairly, everybody to have an opportunity for their company to be responsible, and we built a culture at Lotus that embodied a lot of that. Just a piece of history, our second act was Lotus Notes, which some of you may be more familiar with, in the 1990s, and IBM bought the company in 1995 for several $billion. I've gone on to do lots of other things. And in the past decade, the focus has been on venture capital. And we call it gap closing entrepreneurship because we're interested in founders whose businesses close gaps of access or opportunity or outcome for underserved communities, low-income communities and communities of color. That is our mantra. It's on our website. It's how we evaluate every single deal. And we have invested in over 130 companies in the past decade. A number of well-known names, a number of names that are in the process of becoming well-known, like Genius Plaza. And we have some incredibly kick-ass entrepreneurs in the portfolio. You heard from Anna. I just mentioned one other fascinating company we're about to invest in, about to close the investment. It's called Bitwise. And it is based in a city called Fresno, California. Okay, you've heard of San Francisco and Los Angeles. Fresno is a city of a couple 100,000 people, 170 miles from San Francisco in the middle of the Central Valley. It's where they grow all of the produce in California. It is not affluent. It has high unemployment. It is not a center of tech at all. And the founders at Bitwise have created, in the past 5 years, a tech ecosystem that has created over 1,000 tech jobs in Fresno itself for Fresno residents employed by Fresno companies. And for each one of those jobs created, it supports another 3.4 jobs being created. So they have single-handedly moved the needle in economic development for an area that was really falling behind and being left out. A couple of highlights about it. They paid very careful attention to the specifics of who was there so that their boot camp, their coding academy, works for the people who come from Fresno with high school educations and meets them where they are. And what they train them for is very much influenced by the employers who are there in that city. And there is a lot of health and medical. There's a lot of government. They need web developers. They need IT administrators. So they're not trying to train people to go work at Google or Facebook, but they are training people for local jobs that can't be filled in IT. And those jobs, on average, pay twice what the people were making before. And they do all this by having physical facilities that have classrooms and spaces for startups and meeting spaces and a community space to give the tech community a kind of an identity where it didn't have one before. And we're now going to help them spread this to other cities. But it is living proof. You can take a place that has been left behind, and if you make the right skillful investments, you can catch up. So that's the kind of work that we do. Seed stage tech startups, that is our focus. And again, access, opportunity, or outcome where there are gaps for low-income communities or communities of color. That's what we are looking for. So we always ask when someone comes and pitches us, if your thing works, whatever it is you're making or selling, who's going to be better off? And if the only people that are going to be better off are affluent people because you've maybe developed some new kind of skin cream that's very expensive that's going to make you look better, it's actually going to increase the gap between the affluent and the poor. It is going to be not gap narrowing, but gap widening. And we don't make those kinds of investments. But we do invest across all different kinds of sectors, ed tech, fintech, healthcare, transportation, criminal justice reform, wherever entrepreneurs are closing gaps. And here is where diversity begins to come into the picture, which is that the entrepreneurs we see with the ideas that we invest in disproportionately have lived experiences which are different than the typical entrepreneur, because they themselves have perhaps faced difficulties or challenges in their communities where they've grown up, in their families, their siblings. And for a real entrepreneur, one person's problem is another person's opportunity. And because of their lived experiences fueling their imagination, they're the ones, as you heard from Anna, who come up with the ideas that can actually make a difference in helping address very crucial social problems. So we have a disproportionate number of women founders that we funded, of founders who are African American or Latino or Latina, who come from, have a different lived experience and different background than what usually gets funded. And we are moving the needle on diversity in Silicon Valley. Oops, that. Okay. Our founders came to us several years ago and said, we need some help. We want to make our own workplaces more inclusive, and we want our workforces to be more diverse. Can you help us do that? And I should tell you that these are issues that Frida has been working on for 4 decades, that I've been involved with through her now for 2 decades. And so we said, okay, let's make a deal. We will have a founder's commitment. And since 2016, every company we invest in, we won't write a check unless the founder signs on to say, yes, I will build a diverse workforce with an inclusive environment. And our end of the bargain is to help them do that through education, access to resources, coaching, and a variety of interventions. And we were the first such venture capital firm to do that. It's now been imitated, sometimes well, sometimes not so well, by a number of other firms, and it is integral to how we do business. We also have programs on our nonprofit Kapor Center side to bring more people from the Oakland community. And Oakland is a very diverse community, and it is across socioeconomic lines and across race. There are many people who would like to be in the tech ecosystem but have been excluded from it, and we are a kind of bridge in the programs that we offer through our community engagement side. We have a big, it's sold out every single month on the first Friday, an interesting seminar or training up on the roof of our building. So in addition to the community engagement, the Kapor Center is a place where we do research. I like to call it sometimes Frida Klein's home for wayward PhDs. But much of the groundbreaking research showing the difficulties of underrepresented groups in getting into Silicon Valley and staying have been done by our research group. We have a large project now going on about girls and women of color in tech. And I'll just say one thing about that, which is there's some movement in Silicon Valley about having more gender balance. But to the extent that venture capital firms are adding a woman partner who in every single respect except for gender is exactly the same as all of the male partners, that is stopping very short of an inclusive approach that welcomes people from all backgrounds and all ethnicities and races. And we have some very strong research documenting that things are not yet going the right way, but could if we start acting differently. And Kapor Center is where we do our philanthropy as well. The final piece I want to talk about is the education piece. you hear a debate in Silicon Valley about why there is a lack of diversity. And some people say it's a pipeline problem, and some people say it's a bias problem, meaning some people are saying it's a bias problem, which is that there are plenty of candidates to hire, but the systems are biased. Well, that's actually true, but that is not the entire truth. There's also a pipeline problem in that we are not preparing young people in general, especially young people who come from, young people of color and from lower income backgrounds. We're not preparing them. The US education system is great at the high end, but is failing at the low end. And in fact, a majority of students in US public schools are students of color and have been for a number of years. So the SMASH program, which stands for Summer Math and Science Honors Academy, helps low-income students of color succeed in STEM. Started by Frida 16 years ago. It's a summer program where kids come all 3 summers of high school. It's free of charge. And we have academic year programs in computer science and Saturday academies. So we're helping close the academic preparation gap, but we're also equipping students with the self-confidence and knowledge that they belong in the wider world, that there's a place for them, that they deserve to be there, and that if they work hard, they can succeed. And that piece of the curriculum is every bit as important as the academic preparation. You have to do both. There we go. So it's in 7, actually 8 sites, serving 1,000 students a year now, with just off the charts results and outcomes. 100% high school graduation rate, 93% go to attend a 4-year college, 76% enroll in college as a STEM major, and I don't remember the number, but the 5-year completion rate of an academic degree in STEM is off the charts high, twice as high as the national average. So, and these are the locations that we're at, and more are coming. I bring it up here in particular because it's a proof point that if you make the right investments in education, you can uplift population. You can uplift students who have been excluded, who are not on a track to succeed. It can be done. It's not magic. Obviously, if you move outside the US, and I have no expertise and will not be pinned down on giving specific advice, conditions and circumstances are different, so things must change and adapt. But I believe these principles are universal. Just as I have come to believe in the last 10 years that the principles by which we're investing have widespread applicability. Now, if you talk to, and I meant to say this earlier, but better late than never, conventional investors, they will tell you, if you are investing for social impact, to achieve outcomes, non-financial outcomes, that you are necessarily going to be sacrificing financial returns. They will call it concessionary. That is the prevailing view. Next month, we're going to be publishing an impact report on our financial and social impact at Capewar Capital over the past 9 years. And while I don't want to give away the results here, got to say something for the launch, I can tell you that our results for 130 companies and many tens of millions of dollars of investment going in are really strong by any standard whatsoever. And the work that we do, and so I think it's going to shake people up. It's going to start providing the kind of empirical proof that can give hopefully more confidence to investors and to founders to say, I want to start a business and I want to change the world and I'm going to make a great business. And I don't want investors telling me to take impact out of my deck, or I don't want to have to hide what I really want to do. I think we are trying to build the case for that through our results, and we are trying to build the case for investing in the genius of the whole population through the results in our education programs. I believe this work is incredibly important, and I have given a US-centric talk because we're based in the US and have capacity, limitations and need to focus, but I am coming to believe that there are important learnings from this that apply broadly, and I'm interested in dialogue and learning from you about what might work elsewhere and here, and I just thank you for the opportunity to share the journey that we've been on. So thank you so much.